that because of the news of who Ron might be announcing with tonight, my plan might be out the window. My plan might be out the window. My master media plan.
Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully it still has some sort of a chance. I
We'll
mean,
see.
be more of a facilitator.
More of it, yeah. We'll see. We've got some constitutional hurdles on that one too, but oh, so it is to be the constitutional respecting party. But all right, let's get down to it. We've been chattering along, and as you all may be able to tell, as I welcome you to this unauthorized caucus, it is Thursday. It's noon. It's time for an unauthorized caucus, except Andrew and I are currently sitting in the past. It's what the liberals want you to think that we're doing all the time, but we're not. Conservatives actually understand what's going on and how we should be moving forward. But it is, in fact, Wednesday. Andrew and I both have to pre-record due to schedules and headed out. Hope that you all are looking forward to maybe some good family plans, some plans celebrating the freedom that we have, thanks to the incredible men and women of the U.S. military who have sacrificed their very lives for our freedom. The freedom that Andrew and I have here to be talking openly with you all about so many different things. And of course, Andrew, you were out on assignment last week. We had someone fill in for you, but that ended up going well. It didn't fall apart. We managed. It was okay. But I'm glad to welcome you back. You obviously are on assignment. I'm on assignment. I'm sitting here in our DC office, as you can see, with all the paraphernalia around me. But we're still glad to make sure that we can bring this to you. And I had a quick topic. We'll keep it a little bit shorter today. But the reason I'm out here, and I think it's a good thing to talk about here, patents. And I think that this often just gets thrown into kind of the little policy wonk world of, oh, I don't understand patent law and inventions and such. But and I think we've talked about it here before, probably last year when we had our 6th annual patent event. But we have this patent event every year celebrating the freedom of inventors and intellectual property rights in America. And make no mistake, this is a property rights issue. We talk about, private property and the defense of it and law surrounding it all the time, but this is intellectual property. It's a property right. And it is buried in the Constitution itself. This is not one of the rights listed in the Bill of Rights. The word right appears only one time in the Constitution, and it is in reference to the rights of inventors to keep the fruits of their intellectual material, to have exclusive rights over their intellectual property. So this is an incredibly important thing, and there's a lot of stuff going on. In fact, yesterday was a neat time. We had this event on the 22nd or the 23rd of May, but that's an anniversary. There's what was it? Yesterday was not only in I think in 1906. That was when yesterday, 1906, is when the Wright brothers received their patent on the first on one of their pieces. I think it was the first plane. Maybe it was just components, I forget. And then also yesterday was the anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's receiving of a patent in 18. Andrew, you know this one? 18, isn't it the 40s?
Sounds right, but I don't know if
I think it's the 1840s. But Abraham Lincoln was the first and I think only president to hold a patent, if I'm correct on that. And that's a really big deal. But this is a big thing, and honestly, the founding fathers were incredibly tied into this. It was mentioned by one of our panelists at this event last night that George Washington actually he wanted something, I forget what it was. One of the first patents that was filed and fulfilled with the federal government. He licensed it. At that point in 1793, George Washington could have probably asked for whatever he wanted, and they would have handed it. Oh, sure, President Washington, you please use it. But he licensed and paid for something. This was something that our founding fathers believed in so very much, and I think it's something that all of us should understand the importance of, if not the intricacies of it. So we celebrate that every year. Phyllis was involved in it. Phyllis's father actually was a patent holder over a certain type of engine. I don't think he ever made any money from it and spun it off into business, but he was proud of that. And she understood and received that pride in, this was my idea, my innovation. And in America, that has always been celebrated and protected. That your innovation, you are allowed to benefit from that. It's the reason that we're as free and prosperous as we are today. No other country has had a system like ours until recently. They've copied ours. But that really started here, and it's an incredible thing. So I know, Andrew, you've never been out to one of our patent events, but we've talked about this, and I'm sure that the Teen Eagles have gotten into this, as well. This has been an issue around patents and intellectual. It's not on most people's radars nowadays. But I
Right.
think that conservatives really should understand not just the principle of the intellectual property component itself, but really kind of getting into the Constitution and seeing how the back to basics work, where this comes from. Um, I think this is an incredibly important thing for us to understand, not just now, but looking forward. Do you have any initial thoughts on this before we keep going in the conversation?
Yeah, so actually, I was doing some Googling while you were talking, and it was May 22nd, 1849. Abraham Lincoln had a patent buoying vessels,
49.
patent number 6469. It was a little piece that lifted up boats and buoyed them in rivers to go over different obstacles. So that's what that is, a little history.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, patent's really interesting thing. You hit the nail on the head, Ryan, when you said it's in the Constitution, right? Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, as a matter of fact, is where we hear about patents in the Constitution. It says, this is quoting directly from the Constitution, says to promote the progress of science and useful arts, comma. Now, this is important because Congress does this a lot. And they say, well, to promote the progress of science and useful arts, we are going to have a Department of Education. Or to promote the progress of science and useful arts, we're going to have PBS, okay, or something. But comma there's not a period. It says it's not to promote the progress of science and useful arts. We can do whatever we want. There's a comma and a follow-up statement that specifies what we are going to do to promote science and useful arts. It says, by securing for a limited time to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries, i.e. patents. So this is really important because we get into this idea of intellectual property and private property. Ideas, the government being able to secure through patents intellectual property, right? We have property, whether that be through a home or whether that be through a car. But this is even, arguably just as important, if not more important, intellectual property, intangible property, ideas, those type of things. So it's a really important subject. And it actually is under attack frequently. Marxists, if you are familiar with what Marxism is, not a huge fan of the idea of property. Also not a huge fan of the idea of patents. But it really is an important thing. And we even see it under attack at the global level. I was doing a little bit of this, Ryan, and I think you and I might have talked about this. I'm not sure. But, the World Health Organization, the WHO, they have this new pandemic-related treaty that they're trying to through that's in this zero draft stage this year. They're going to probably ratify it next year. Potential Senate have to approve this. So when the time comes for this World Economic Forum, or not World Economic Forum, World Health Organization zero draft pandemic treaty, when that gets to the stage of actually being ratified, call your senator and tell them to not vote for the World Health Organization pandemic treaty. But in that, it has a clause in it that says that member nations will, next time there's a declared pandemic from the World Health Organization, they will have to give up intellectual property, whether that be through vaccines, whether that be through medical equipment, whether that be through intellectual property that deals with fighting a pandemic. Countries pretty much have to give up those ideas, give up that intellectual property to the global stage, from which the World Health Organization will, quote, this is what the document says, equitably distribute the goods to countries and priority populations and developing nations. And it's funny because one of those developing nations they recognize is China. The document recognizes China as a developing. I don't recognize China as a developing nation. I think we've been developing them for a long time, and they are very. So this idea of patents and intellectual property actually is really important, and it's even a conversation now on the global stage, even with applications and issues as relevant as the COVID-19 pandemic, where we might in the future our intellectual property, medical patents, vaccine patents, whatever the case may be, to other countries and maybe adversarial countries. So what patents are, the importance of them, and fighting intellectual property is an incredibly important issue to patriots.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. This is this whole conversation, from intellectual property and patents all the way through to a host of other things. when you're talking about this subject, you're really just kind of knocking on the door of the big conversation: individualism versus collectivism. And as you and I know, I mean, we could go into the weeds on the definitions for these two terms, but collectivism, as we mean it in a political sense, pretty much also comes hand in hand with coercion. That's essentially what always happens, where we have a central power coercing and sharing. And of course, that's where equity comes in, and it gets real dicey real fast. But this individualistic notion is just at the core of the founding fathers' understanding, and at the core of where we as a nation ought to be now. Whether at that point we were talking about, and I mean, you could trace this all the way back even to Jamestown and the Pilgrims. You see communities taking care of each other, but we still have individual responsibility, and then it comes to a communal caretaking, but not collectivism. And then that point is made over and over incorrectly by folks nowadays. The Pilgrims and the Jamestown colony. No, every time that collectivist notion was tried, it failed. There was an individual responsibility, an individual right, individual care, and that would always turn into generosity. That would always turn into benevolence. And it really is incredible when you start spinning that into the modern world and seeing where we are now, because of this society that we have built on individualism, on your individual innovation and ideas and free speech and intellectual properties. We have become this huge and prosperous and incredibly technologically advanced nation who has then turned around and benevolently extended the hand to the rest of the world and to actual developing nations, not to China. And I mean, like that's really incredible. When you have that freedom to keep the fruits of your own labor, you really do find as a whole that it is let go into taking care of others and extending the hand to pull them up with you, and then we get better and better. It's a very interesting thing. And again, this is under attack, not just in foreign policy, under the treaties, under these different things. This is under attack in our culture, I would argue. This is the exact opposite of what's being taught by higher and even lower education now, down into the grade school levels, about individualism bad, collectivism good. I mean, they're fundamentally reorganizing the way that Americans think and how America has been, the principles that we've been based on. And this is just like this is a microcosm of it, but it's a really good one to understand, because when you get pulled off of this and some others that make sense when you get into this issue, it gets easy to start, distracting and confusing people, which is exactly what they're doing. So, this is the big battle. This is, free markets versus socialism and communism. This is individualism and freedom and liberty versus Marxism. This is the conversation that we're in, and these patents and intellectual properties are just a piece of it. But it's a really interesting piece of it to get into and realize this whole world is out there. And actually, what I was just going to say, I was going to note, it's really interesting. This once you dive into this specific world of patents and intellectual property, it is no longer a party-driven world. It is not just Republicans and Democrats, the left and the right. There are those two worlds colliding on this when they look at it and say, no, hold on. You create something, someone can't come in and steal it, whether we call it infringement or this and that. That's theft. This is stealing. You have an idea. You have the right to solidify the exclusive right to your idea. Anyone else who tries to get around the system, this is theft. And you find yourself in a room with a bunch of, out here at our events, Democratic staffers, Democrat-appointed judges. We honored a Democrat-appointed judge last night, I believe. In the past, our award winners, the Phyllis Schlafly Friend of American Invention Award. We've had a Republican senator and a Democrat senator, and we don't just specifically pick one from each. We look at who this year has been making an impact in this kind of unknown field, and it goes across the board. I think that it's an indicator that even amongst all of the very divisive issues, when you get to one of these issues that hasn't been politicized as heavily, you really do find that there is a lot of commonality of understanding from people. Hold on, that my internal sense tells me that's not right. That's right. Not fair. That's not just. That still exists, and it gives me that glimmer of hope that as conservatives, if we can see this in the microcosm of the patent world, there's an opportunity for us to reach out and appeal to that individualism, because, I mean, deep down inside, you want to call it intuition, you want to call it your gut, or you want to call it your conscience, the Holy Spirit talking to you. I think that pull is there for people, a lot of people still, of what is inherently fair or just or not. And it goes across the political spectrum in America when you take away the hyperbolic politics of it all. So this, I don't know, as we're marching toward 2024 in the election cycle, which I know But at the point, supposedly there's going to be another contender in the presidential race at the point that this video releases tomorrow. We're not going to comment on that, though, because it hasn't happened yet tonight. But we'll see. DeSantis might hop into the race, it looks like. Tim Scott has hopped in. That happened since last Thursday, I think. So yeah, it's getting crazy. What we could say is the field of choices that are running for vice president is getting very wide. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. But it is definitely, the whole race is going to shape up to be interesting. There are some interesting voices getting in. But I think that as we watch that field shape up, this is our opportunity to remember, hey, this microcosm issue, who's paying attention to this? What members of Congress? Because this is one of those understandings of the Constitution, not just following the political winds. And I think that's the kind of folks that we need to be looking at and seeing who follows the Constitution and not the political whims, who understands what it means to look at and examine the Constitution, not just follow the political whims. So let that be a good lesson to us as we're setting up. And then also the microcosm of patents and intellectual property, let this be a gigantic lesson to us moving forward of individualism versus collectivism. This is one of these things, one of these roots will produce prosperity. I wanted to say productivity. It does produce productivity. It produces prosperity. One doesn't. And then prosperity inevitably produces generosity. I mean, challenge me. That it's true. Prosperity inevitably induces generosity. So that's a really uniquely American principle to understand. And this is kind of a uniquely American place of law and constitutionality to examine it. So I think it's a really neat thing that's just kind of off the radar for most of us. And I think as conservatives, this is a really cool area to look at and discuss amongst ourselves and realize some much bigger principles we can draw out of it. So I thought that today was a good opportunity to bring everyone's attention down to that. I'm going to grab, well, we're not posting the links live. I'll make sure that the links are posted down here below, but I'm going to go find a couple of those here. And I want Andrew to close us out. If he has a closing thought, we'll keep it a little shorter one today. I know that we're headed off to plans. All of you hopefully are as well here in the next day or two. And I've got a couple of things I want to bring to your attention, a couple books that Phyllis wrote and some other things that I'm going to gather while Andrew gives us a closing thought. What do you think, Andrew? How does this play into our next year? Specifically, what could conservatives who are paying attention to the field of battle in 2024, so to speak, how does this apply to them to look at and understand as we're getting down to the wire on voting for candidates? What can we pull out of this as a lesson?
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything that's probably not super predictable, but I imagine everybody watching this is a Republican primary voter. So, we're going to have a lot of choices and there's going to be a lot of discussion. And by the time this post makes it on Thursday afternoon, there might or might not be a particular Floridian that has a alligator as his banner poster on Twitter that's running for president of the United States. Okay. Mm-hmm. That may or may not happen tonight at 6 p.m. At the Miami Four Seasons Hotel. But
last night at 6 p.m. Last night at 6 p.m. Yeah.
I'm going to take this is me saying this in my personal capacity, Ryan, but I'm going to make a bet. By the time this is posted, I bet Ron DeSantis runs for president. So that there's me being.
I think I already said that. This isn't revolution. I just mentioned a minute ago.
I'm saying it more officially, so I sound intelligent. We'll be like, what? Right. He said in the. I'm watching. So everyone can think that I'm very intelligent when I just actually went to Twitter. But the big discussion here is going to be who's going to win the Republican primary. And this is going to get a lot of contests. This is going to get a lot of discussion. And my rubric is who has the best chance of going into Washington, D.C. and draining the swamp. That really is my big point here. It's not who maybe looks the best to a moderate, who looks the best to swing voters. Of course, you want to win an election. I can completely understand that. And I do want to win the election because if you don't win, what's the point? But there does come a time where you have to ask, who is best equipped to go in and drain the swamp? And I think that's still Donald Trump. There might be a chance for Ron DeSantis to do something really good. And I really like Ron DeSantis. I actually think he's probably more socially conservative than Trump, which is debatable, but I think that might be true. Mm-hmm. But there's going to be a lot of contest about this. But who is going to be the most constitutional? Who's going to be the most pro-America? Who is going to be the most, equipped and ready to drain the swamp? And the left is going to come into this Republican primary and make it a battle of who has the best rhetoric, who has the best talking points, who has the best presentation to win over swing voters. And they're going to have us obsess over that instead of getting behind the person who's actually going to go in and do the damage and get the job done. Mm-hmm. So keep the first thing first, because you're going to have Nikki Haley saying things. You're going to have Mike Pence saying things. You're going to have Tim Scott saying things. And now you're probably going to have, who I love, Ron DeSantis saying things. But that one question still remains: who is the best equipped to go in and drain the swamp? And I think there's probably still one obvious answer to that question. And people can make up their minds what I mean by that. I alluded to it fairly obviously. But I still think the answer to that is pretty clear as far as I see it. So let's keep the first things first, Republican primary voters, as we head into this jungle of a next year in debates and conversations. And yes, let's think about social conservatism. Let's think about ideas. Let's continue to better ourselves. But also at the same time, let's think about winning the election and getting the job done as the paramount objective.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. And you know what? That's, by the way, thank you for your subtlety. It was about as subtle as, well, I got a lot of good analogies, but we'll just say it was subtle. You're very subtle there. No, I tend to agree with you. And I think that I'll just tack on one final thought, just 30 seconds. Yeah. Remember who the enemy is. Remember who the battle is being fought against. And at this point, I think that we've pretty clearly in America, the lines have been redefined, and it's no longer traditional Democrats, traditional Republicans, kind of a left version, kind of a right version of the same system. We are talking about two diametrically opposed different systems. This individualism, this collectivism, these represent a republic and a fill in the blank, what you want to call it, a communist, a Marxist society, an oligarchy, all of the different corrupt versions, a statist society rather than a people, a citizen first society, which is antithetical to what America has been founded upon and reaffirmed as time after time. And if we're going to, look toward not only what issues matter to us and how we tackle those issues, but who we want to send there, it's not just to articulate a conservative position. It is to dismantle a machine that has slowly built against we the people, the administrative state, the bureaucracy, fill in the blank with the name, the establishment, the swamp, the deep state. This machine has assembled against we the people for decades and decades now. And it is going to take far more than just one election cycle to undo it. But let's remember what the job is and who the enemy is. And that is a good way to start. Now, who do I want to go and fight this for us? Who do I want to put into this position and across these positions? And again, I'm not even advocating for one here. I tend to agree with Andrew, who I think is my personal pick for what the best person is to fulfill that role. But we need to all be clear on not just who sounds the best and looks the best, not just who espouses the best social issues, who is equipped to fight the enemy that we currently face and the battle that we currently face. And I think that we all need to understand we have moved beyond the traditional left and right issues. We've even moved beyond the pro-life, pro-abortion, destruction of the family, pro-traditional marriage. We have moved to a system that is trying to completely upend our republic and replace it with a statist system, a state first supreme being. We all belong to the state and serve it system. That's not America. And we have to make sure that that is stopped at all costs so that we can continue to have these grand discussions like our forefathers did about which direction we want to go on these policy issues. But if we lose the platform, to discuss it in, the policies are it doesn't matter anymore. So I think that that's a very important thing that strategically, as we're looking forward to voting, we need to think about it and think about it correctly. So I hope that that's what we do. And I hope that, again, Andrew, you and I and other folks, I know we had Jesse on last week. We talked a lot about this, got more into the religious side of it. These are the good conversations that we got to be having. These are important. And I think that we need to have a good understanding on all these things. But I'm going to leave it there. We've got some links that we're going to drop here below in the description, down in the comments as well. There's a book that we've put together, Phyllis Schlafly, on patents and invention. I think this is a really neat thing to spin off into, but there's also a lot of other stuff I hope you spin off to as well. Don't forget, sign up for our email list. Go to phyllisschlafly.com. I forgot to say that at the beginning. Andrew, you were supposed to remind me. No. I'm thrown off because it's Wednesday. I don't even know what to say. But go to phyllisschlafly.com, sign up for the email list. Don't forget to go find us Rumble, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can also find us on Getter and Truth Social and all of the others. Make sure that we are connected, because as we start rolling through this, as DeSantis hops in, as Nikki Haley starts talking more, Tim Scott's hopped in, as this primary field gets going, I think that conservatives need to be laser focused on the issues, on the Constitution, and on understanding what the battle is, more than any of the personalities that are running, so that we can make tactical decisions that will matter for the future of the country. So join us in that. Go sign up for the email list. Make sure you get these notifications and others. And we'll keep having good conversations. And we might even keep coming from random spots like our backyard or our, undisclosed location. Our undisclosed location with trees. Undisclosed location DC office. We'll keep having these good conversations, and we hope that you'll keep joining us. So that's what I want you to do. Go check out some of those links. Start thinking tactically about your vote in 2024 and how it matters as a tactical and strategic tool. And join us next Thursday at noon for another Unauthorized Caucus. We'll look forward to having you then. So thank you, Andrew. Thanks for being back. Yep. And we'll talk to everyone next week. Thanks, everybody.